Well, hi, everybody. Everyone who's joined us. I'm Aviva. We've got an incredible panel today with a very wide range of perspectives to discuss what's going on with iOS these days with all the changes that have been going on. So we'll be looking into how have the iOS 14.5 privacy changes affected how we do our marketing, and how will iOS 15's new features possibly improve things for us. So we've got me, Aviva. I'm the head of organic, and Adi, who is user acquisition team lead. We're both from yellowHEAD to give you the agency perspective. We also have Roy from AppsFlyer, Moshi from Beachbum, and Elad from Wix joining us. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, but first I just wanted to give an intro for anyone who's unfamiliar. yellowHEAD is a performance marketing company specializing in ASO, UA, SEO, creative services, and we have our creative analytics technology as well. So each of you can introduce yourselves. Maybe we'll start with Adi, since she's also from yellowHEAD.
So hi everyone, my name is Adi and I'm a user acquisition team leader here in yellowHEAD. I've been working here in the past 5 years, dealing with a variety of products and verticals.
Just jump in, guys.
Hi guys, I'm Moshi. I'm the VP of Marketing at Beachbum Games. We develop fun games, evergreen games that deals with engagement and excitement. And happy to be here.
Elad.
Hi guys, during the past 4 years, I've been leading the mobile growth for Wix. I've been doing digital for the past 13 or so years. That's me.
And I'm Roy. I'm a head of product at AppsFlyer, leading all of SKAD network part and kind of iOS 14 for work that's being done for AppsFlyer. And I've been with AppsFlyer for the past almost 5 years.
Amazing. So we have a good mix of views here. Just before we start the discussion, I just wanted to mention we do have the Q&A section. So if anybody has any questions, then we will have time towards the end of the discussion to answer questions. So please feel free to submit those. Okay, so let's look back before we look forward at pre-iOS 14.5. Okay, all the speculations that were going on in the industry. What of those speculations actually turned out to be true? What didn't? I'd be interested to hear what impacts you've each seen in your own domains. Adi, do you want to start?
Yes, thanks. So overall, we had a lot of speculations and we were kind of walking in the dark before the big change has arrived. So in the last few weeks, we can say that we see that the adoption rate has raised, and since then we've seen many changes and fluctuations in the different platforms. There are different impacts that we see and that we feel with the campaigns. The first impact would be on the amount of the conversions that we are getting back. Of course, that now with all the limitations and restrictions, we see less and less data, especially for more complex and long funnels. And the second impact is on the optimization that we're all doing in terms of the optimization goals that we want to run for our campaigns. Since we need the conversions to keep coming and the signals in order to drive campaigns to different optimization goals. So now we are very limited with that. For example, for ROI, or for different events that we want to optimize towards. And I think those are the main impacts that we feel. I can share from our experience with the different platforms that, for example, on Facebook, we've seen instability in the at first, and now in the last, let's say, few weeks, it's balanced a bit. We did see changes coming on CPMs, CPIs, and different metrics. So we needed to adjust our methods that we work on. In Google, I can say that we have seen increase in activity towards UEC Android and a bit of decrease towards iOS if we're talking about budget allocations and testing different things. And also we have seen more traffic going towards Apple search ads, a bit of over UEC iOS. We did in Google an increase in CPC in different verticals. And also what we see is more investment going into web activities in order to gain more data and to have more accurate optimization, and also spreading and expanding into more and more platforms. So we are really facing a change in the budget allocation.
Moshi.
Yeah, so I have actually a couple of things, right? The first one is the my initial impression that Apple is going to create an Armageddon, like a one-day Armageddon, and everything will be changed from that day on. What happened actually is that they kind of did some dance of like 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards in like changing and starting the iOS 14.5, but then reduced the adoption rates to like something like 10%. And then they kind of improve their SK network, which didn't work at the beginning, and it was like it gave us more signals. But then they opened again the iOS 14.6, which had much higher adoption rate. So it looks like it's kind of a dance between bad and good that Apple is kind of bringing to this industry in this changing paradigm of reality. Second thing is this. Like the costs of buying your performance in different operating system. I was under the impression that Android is going to CPIs and CPAs are going to be increased a lot on Android and then decreased a lot in the same rate in iOS, but this is something that didn't happen. What we actually saw is that they both kind of increased, and the inventory that passed the barrier to iOS 14.5 was the one that was cheaper, but advertisers were reluctant to kind of change their budget between things, between like the iOS pre-iOS 14.5 and then like pre-iOS and post-iOS. And the third thing, I think it's the lack of leadership that we saw. Like from one hand, like we had the evil doing from Apple, and then like on the other hand, we didn't see anyone stood up and kind of trying to defend against it. We kind of saw little things coming from Facebook, but no more than that. And I was expecting that the industry will give Apple the full blown of wrath, right? About like how did you do that, and it didn't happen. And this is interesting to see.
I saw Roy nodding there.
Yeah, I have a lot to say. Yeah, I actually, I'm not going to address speculation that were before because there were so many, but I think it's worth mentioning a few things that I think to this day, some people are not aware, and I would like to point in some ways, different manners that let's talk about the major ad networks that have the approach that they've taken. And this is something that's really interesting and no one could see it in advance. So we see, for example, Facebook has totally put their chips on SKAD network, both in terms of installs and also post-install activity. This is something that, as far as I've seen, almost no other ad network is currently doing. Actually using the post-install, the conversion value to optimize, not just to report, but also to optimize based on. And actually that kind of, we're going to talk later on about the privacy threshold, but that kind of was a double-edged sword to them.
Sure.
Whereas if we look at Google, for example, they've taken the approach of, I'm doing modeling, I'm doing attribution for myself, keep doing attribution for myself, modeling. And you know what, I'm going to support SKAD network, but as a reporting at the moment, not as attribution for me and my optimization. And we do see, for example, Snap and Twitter are also have taken the approach of SKAD network. So I think it's funny, currently we are all taking SKAD network as granted and as obvious, but I'm coming from AppsFlyer, and the way it seemed in the market and the way maybe it seemed for us, like no one's gonna adopt SKAD network. What is this, right? So yeah, but we still thought we need to develop, we need to work on that no matter what, because obviously this is where things are going. But yeah, this is interesting, things that have evolved, and I think it will keep evolving with the networks that I've just mentioned and how they approach these things.
Roy, actually, like a follow-up question, right? Do you think that Facebook deliberately took SKAD network reporting, or because they are SAN or SRM, it kind of this was their only choice, right? And you know, Snapchat and Twitter actually also SANs, so it's also failed on it, and the other networks, Upload and Iron Source, Unity, and all the rest, right? They did the they had the choice in like doing probabilistic attribution, and then they choose it because this was the easier thing to do.
Yeah. So yeah, I think they didn't have a choice. I think they put their chips on it. Just it's the best thing that they could have. This is their nature, and they're not gonna, the reason they're not supporting probabilistic, they won't share their user data unattributedly. So
Sure.
this kind of left them with this option only. Yes. But I do know I think, you know, there's the here and now and there's the future. In the here and now, they've built on that. Future, I know they're working on solutions.
Right. So, sorry, as you said, in my opinion, right, the fact that we didn't feel the entire weight of the iOS 14.5 because we still have probabilistic attribution, and it feels like we are all hanging on a cliff. And you know, the last push that Apple is need to give us is like, well, if we will limit you on probabilistic attribution, then everyone will kind of fall off the cliff, and we'll try to kind of find out a new way to optimize our campaigns.
Elad, did you want to answer? Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. So for us as an ROI-driven advertiser, I think that it was not less than a paradigm shift. So if previously we knew what would be the cost of a specific user, and we could know what was the revenue generated from this specific user, today there is a growing part of the user base that we cannot do this attribution for. And I mean, it creates, as an understatement, a discomfort at all levels, right? Because there is the universe for which we can continue operate as normal, and there is a small but growing part of the user base that we cannot know what is the ROI for. And that this smaller and growing universe need to be addressed in different ways, right? And the different ways are more likely closer to blended ROI calculation, in which we're taking the entire cost and allocating that to the entire amount of new users, regarding if organic or paid. And this is again a huge change for us. Another often overlooked, but again, from an advertiser point of view, a very important tricky part is everything to do with deferred deep links. So deferred deep links are the links that allows you to either download and open your app for the first time. And they've been working for many years, both on Android and on iOS. And Apple announced that they will stop enabling it. And we're keeping a close eye on it. Currently, funny enough, it is still working, but perhaps not for long. So all kind of smart campaigns that we're doing today may not sustain in the short term.
Interesting. So from the organic side anyway, what you were saying about looking at blended data. So one of the predictions or the understanding going into iOS 14.5 was, okay, there'd be less ability to have accurate attribution. So the organic will grow. But what's actually happened is it's not so simple. Okay, so what we're seeing on the data from the MMPs, even in terms of trends, doesn't match really what we're seeing on App Store Connect. There's never been, 100% alignment there because of the different definitions. But now, even in terms of trends, we're not even seeing a correlation. So we'll see what happens, basically. Yeah. So maybe we can talk. We do need to get into iOS 15 as well. So maybe let's just give a bit more background and expand a bit more on the SKAd network and its privacy thresholds. Maybe Roy, that's a better question for you.
Yeah, I think this is, obviously it's the number one. I don't know if number one, but one of the most interesting items that we are fascinated with, and I think all our customers are as well as ad networks, because what I was mentioning, in the end, you want to measure user value. Install is good, but we've come a long way since as an industry, since only counting on installs. And this privacy threshold is something that's keeping us from doing that, because we're seeing in different ad networks, we're seeing a lot of different trends. So I think a blog post that we've recently released is showing that something happened on May 20th, which obviously Apple did not say anything, something just happened. But we saw a huge increase of the ratio of conversion null values among the major ad networks. And on the other side, we saw a huge decrease of the portion of null values for not the major ad networks. And this is something very interesting. We're still analyzing it. We're looking at the data, and we're seeing some trends. The more campaigns you have, i.e. SKAd network campaigns, it doesn't necessarily need to be a campaign on the ad network side, but the entity which is represented by a number of 1 to 100, the more you have, obviously, the less likely you are to pass the privacy threshold. And we actually saw this number rise significantly above when it's getting to 50 and above. And that's not something the advertiser has control on. That's something, for example, Facebook runs behind the scenes, or any other network. And we also saw that the number of installs, obviously, per campaign per day is affecting it, but we also have and we released it in the blog post, numbers where we can see where it goes up to the safe level where you pass privacy threshold. So these are really interesting stuff that we're concerned about.
So connecting it to like a solution, maybe like a tip to how to be better at buying iOS 1.5 and above. is the fact that you actually need to consolidate your campaigns into there's just the ones that are the most effective and the one that spends the most, right? You also, in my opinion, you need to consolidate your sources. So you will have like just the main sources that you're running in order to one, spend effectively and pass the threshold in each and every one of your campaigns. And secondly, trying to identify the trends that you're seeing in your mixed or organic traffic, like the organic, which we didn't manage to attribute, and like the way that you're spending your money. Like the smaller the amount of your sources, the number of sources, the higher chance that you will be able to kind of find a correlation between them.
Cool. Maybe we can talk a bit before we go into iOS 15, because there's a lot to talk about there. Let's talk about how the role of creative has changed in all of this. How has its role changed, in your opinion, in terms of how you conduct your campaign strategies?
So basically, creative has always been a super significant part of our optimization, but with the less and less data that we get on the targeting level, on the users level, the importance of creative has become much more significantly. If before iOS 14.5, we were relying on the lower funnel events and then predict the user's behavior upon that. Now we are structuring our predictions on upper funnel events like clicks, like CTR that we see, and over there the creative have become maybe one of the most important things for testing. In our day-to-day job, we are going into very detailed analysis of the creative, looking on every and each feature and element that we have. We do it with Allison, our in-house creative analysis platform that we developed here, and the creative testing became a major part of our strategy when we structure the account, when we make media plans, and it has a significant impact on the results.
I think the role hasn't changed, right? Creative still is the most impactful factor in creating yourself a competitive advantage. Just the testing of the creative now, most likely you will start testing it on Android and then see like the performance in bringing, as you said, Adi, bringing results that correlate with your business success, and then try to kind of seeing whether it's kind of going to stick or not in iOS with the higher funnel metrics.
Interesting. So you're transferring insights from Android to iOS now.
Yes, and I think everyone else is doing it. Like, for example, right, all the hyper casual companies, which was they actually did their old tests on iOS US, and now moved to kind of Android and do some tests on Android. So it's a huge shift. It's a huge shift in a lot of like in their perspective of perspective or their expectation of what type of audience they want to see. And it's interesting to see trends or the residual damage that Apple did with their move.
And you're seeing consistent results when you do that?
Yes, for us, each pump, we don't see a lot of difference between iOS users and Android users. We didn't see it before, and luckily, you're not seeing it now. So we had this shortcut, which is great for us.
Interesting. Elad, do you have any insights there in terms of taking insights from Android and transferring them to iOS?
Yeah, so For my experience in Android, there is a much wider variance of devices. So maybe you see a different user behavior when you look at very old or very edge, like rare devices, maybe used by kids, maybe not very expensive. But when you look at the high-end devices and you compare that to Apple devices, then you realize that performance of campaigns, conversion rates, CTRs, and all that gets quite similar. So that, another technique to mitigate the variance is to look at the high-end devices on Android, and then the learnings can more easily be projected into iOS.
Interesting. Okay. So now we do need to actually move into iOS 15 because there's so much to talk about there. When we talk about iOS 15 and the announcements that went along with that, basically the two main changes that are going to completely impact both ASO and UA is the ability to start doing A/B testing within the App Store, similar to Google Play Experiments tool, but also the custom product pages, which basically until now there has been no way to test on iOS within as like a native tool like Google Play has. So basically all traffic that has been coming, whether it's from inside the store or from UA campaigns, website, whatever we're talking about, would end up on this one page, and we'd have no way of improving conversion other than using third-party tools or testing before and after, basically. So now we'll not only be able to test pages, but we'll actually be able to create a specific app page and link it up to campaigns. And so we'll have the ability to create up to 35 different pages that basically each one will have its own link, and you can link that page to a specific campaign. So this is huge, obviously, and where we're losing data on the lower funnel side, now it's kind of Apple's coming and saying, well, we'll give you a bit more information on what's happening before the install. So that's kind of what's been going on, or what people are talking about. The other thing is it seems that when we're using these custom pages, one of the metrics that will be given will be average purchase per paying user. So that's like, it's not even something that's available on the Google Play side, and it kind of, definitely feeds into this idea of giving more information because we have less information. So it's just, maybe this is a question more for Moshe and Elad, how you see the role of ASO or managing all of these different product pages changing in terms of its connection with user acquisition.
Yeah. So I'll start from the second part of the news. Having multiple app pages is a huge acquisition enabler for an app that caters for multiple intents. So if you are both enabling, for example, in our case, to build a website and send email campaigns and manage chats and create a video and so on and so forth. And today, everything is capsulated within one app page, one title, one set of creatives. And of course, as performance marketeer, we can imagine that there is a huge conversion rate drop there. Having multiple app pages catering for multiple intents, I think it's huge and very concrete value for us as an advertiser. As to the A/B testing mechanism, I mean, it's great. Going back to what Moshe said earlier, what we've done so far is to A/B test on Android and to deploy the tests on iOS. and it worked for us. And now we will not need to do that. So it's definitely nice to have.
Agreed.
Like, from one side, from my side, first thing that I'm asking myself is like, who is the guy that's responsible for allocations, quantity allocation in Apple? Like on one hand, like you're giving us just like 64 events to measure all of our campaigns, all of our traffic, all of our creative and ad set, and then like giving us like 35 versions per product page per language, which is too much. What I think is going to happen is that you're probably going to use 3 of the versions in order to do some ASO. And then the rest of the versions are going to be dedicated specifically for user acquisition and for tracking different types and different parts of your campaigns. And actually, that's the candy that you're getting after the stick from Apple. This is how I see this involved in like being more specifically a user acquisition tool than an ASO tool.
I can tell that right now we collaborate, the UA and the ASO, on joint products, sharing insights and learning in terms of keywords and creative messaging that we see that drive positive trends and good results. However, with the option to create specific pages, we have a much more dynamic tool for optimization, and the funnel has basically become a full testing ground. With careful collaboration and thinking with ASO, we can reach to much more insights than before.
I want to add a bit on what's already been said, which is a lot, but I think a lot is yet TBD in terms of documentation. A lot is still unknown. How do you get the page unique ID? I did see, by the way, for those that haven't seen it yet, maybe it's more for the ad networks, that they did add the field of the unique product page within as a beta option in their documentation for the load product function. And with regards to paid acquisition and connecting it to the creative, to the ad, this is not fully determined yet, whether they're going to incorporate it in AdTech network, or how will you determine which creative resulted to which custom page is yet not entirely defined. So again, interesting stuff that.
I agree. And by the way, it's like kind of lowering the privacy or the user privacy, let's say, policy that Apple is kind of trying to introducing to the market, right? Because it does give you more insights, and it's, if you're actually very smart, you do have some data scientists that are now working on models. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, as you said, Roy, we don't know how it's going to unfold, but if it's going to unfold the way that Aviva said, well, you can kind of use this information in order to create yourself a better modeling to understand exactly how to then, reattribute your traffic correctly. Which is interesting as a concept.
Yeah, and I think my opinion, I think at the moment they care more about user experience rather than us.
That's for sure.
The app developers and the ability to measure it and the ability to monetize more so so there's no problem. You'll be able to connect the creative to the custom product page, but later on measure it, seeing it, able to optimize it, I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So definitely there's still a lot to be seen. Also in terms of just the user interface, what's that going to look like? Will it be user friendly, for managing all of these 35 pages? As Moshe was saying, 35 pages is a lot. So from our side, we would say, probably don't even start don't even start thinking about, using more than 5 at first, and then, getting used to understanding the tool, learning it, what kind of data is being given to us, and then kind of work your way up. Do you guys have any ideas yet, like how you would build the strategy using the new opportunities that Apple is giving us?
As Elad said, right, we are definitely going to take the A/B testing of the actual store assets and try to then seeing if what we traditionally applied from Android is now valid tested, or whether it's going to be the opposite way. And I think somebody mentioned in a previous webinar that they did measure it, and it was absolutely there was the biggest discrepancy between like the behavior of Android and iOS because of the different sizes and the different emphasis on different types of store assets. And well, with regards to the 35 versions, let's see what Apple's going to bring us, and then let's try to then hack it from there.
What will be interesting to see is if Google Play will react, giving more options and more segmentation with their testing tools as well. So speaking of Google, they too, have been announcing upcoming privacy changes for Google Play as well. What is your take on this kind of shift in the industry, and how should we be dealing with it, reacting to it, preparing for it? Will it become even more extreme in the future? What should we look forward to, do you think?
I can start by saying that clearly this thing of non-personal attribution is here to stay and is here going to expand. And us as an advertisers are going to retain these dual reporting structures in which in some part of the world we know how to calculate cost and revenue per user, and in the other we don't, and it's going to stay in the foreseeable future this way.
I'm a bit more optimistic. And I have reasons to be optimistic. Not here to promote AppsFlyer, but we are working on interesting stuff. I completely agree on the user level point you were raising, but with regards to being able to measure obviously LTV in obviously a very limited way, but also measuring installs and the ability to deduplicate data is things that we're working on, and I think currently the industry is still adjusting to the new reality, and I think things will get better. We talked about conversion value nulls. I think the ad networks will figure it out, or the industry will figure it out. And also, I think a lot of, for example, publishers have yet to adopt SK network, which results in less attribution for SK network, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think things will get better. Obviously, not perfect, not the way it used to be, but better.
I'm even more optimistic than you, Roy. I think that the Google team is more communicative, and actually they're more open to feedback from the industry. And therefore, I don't think that they will act the same as Apple did. I think that if they will try to get more into the privacy or the user privacy, they will do it with the industry and with the MMP that we all rely on, with the big advertisers that the industry is depending on, and with the other ad networks that kind of fitting this ecosystem. So, in my opinion, it won't be the same as the Apple iOS 14 app.
Cool, interesting. Any final thoughts from you guys before we move into the Q&A section?
So actually, we haven't talked about like the iOS 14 scheme and like how should you kind of build your SKI network. If you have some time, maybe that's like a good time to speak about it. What do you
Yeah,
say?
go for it.
So like I think that one of the things that's interesting the most, and we kind of mentioned it before in like the stages that Apple is doing, and the entire industry is like progressing with Apple on that. The fact that you have more ability now to kind of design your scheme to better support your activity, right? And one of the things that we saw is that the initial solutions that the MMP suggested was not necessarily covering for all application, for all use case, and sometimes they didn't impact us. What we're happy to see is that after the initial shock of iOS 14.5, we saw that the most MMPs that probably most of the advertisers are using to kind of support their scheme is more collaborative, and then you can create more custom-made scheme and to kind of support your own activity. That's being said, right? Like my advice to advertisers, like don't lock on your current scheme, but try to kind of then refresh it from time to time and understand whether it's tracking your performance correctly, or whether you need to do some adaptation to maybe capture more users or to capture more valuable users, and rebuild it, because, well, to be honest, no one actually knows, and no one actually knows how to buy efficiently with iOS 0.5 traffic. So you can still do your tests when it's like still cheap and like the other advertisers didn't capture all the quality, because the one that is the most tested is the one that actually launching themselves to kind of new open and new success.
I want to add on that because I couldn't agree more. I think LTV measurement has become the new advantage one advertiser can have over the other. The better you are in measuring user value, the better you can be at optimization of your campaign and thus winning over. And this has become, right, it was in plain sight for everyone prior to iOS 14, but this has become a new treasure, right? The better you are at it, you will win. The cheaper you can get media. So I couldn't agree more, and we also see it as one of the items that has a long roadmap, and the industry keeps evolving and improving with regards to using these 6 bits.
Right. And most of the time, that the fact that you have a default choice is not necessarily the perfect choice, right? So one thing that was pretty constant from the beginning is that like you should cut your reporting of the conversion value after 24 hours. In my opinion, only my opinion, right? This limitation that was first introduced by Facebook is actually not true, and not all of the application can measure correctly and predict user value after 24 hours. You can definitely need some more time. So if you're cutting your event after 24 hours because this was the default option, then don't do that. And you have so many other default choices that you need to kind of avoid in order to kind of find your own way and to kind of acquire users in the most effective way.
Yeah, it reminds me of a point that I think is important, that in this era, advertisers that has low variance of user value are better off than others with high variance. And I will, of course, give examples. If, for example, I have an event for a first-time purchase of a subscription that usually is ongoing and it's one type of package, so it's very easy to predict the lifetime value in this specific case, unlike a first game that may yield in-app purchases, may yield revenue from ads, may not. So the variance in the later example is, of course, much bigger, and this advertisers will encounter many more challenges to optimize these campaigns.
Sure.
Would you say overall that basically Apple is pushing for subscriptions?
So I think it's a sensitive question, right, for various reasons. But generally speaking, my personal opinion is that yes, they are trying to increase, among other things, app revenues that are going through in-app purchases and less about ad monetization. But it's just speculations, and it's nothing but my opinion.
By the way, if you're talking about ad monetization, that's in my opinion, right, that's the easiest way of measuring, of using the scheme of the SKAd network in order to kind of measure your ad revenue. And what's funny is that when I talking to my colleagues, right, some of them are getting hyper casual, some of them are dealing like purchases, and some of them hyper casual as like in administration. Some of them are dealing application that is based on purchases, and the other ones that are working in a subscription-based application. I think that everyone is maybe optimistic that they are the least that get hurt. So if that's the case, then I think that we are better than what we think that we are, because as an industry, if everyone is thinking that they are in the best position, then it says something.
Great. I think we can move into questions. Let's see what we have here. Do you think Apple is going to be bigger than Facebook in terms of ad spend in the platform due to shift of UA budgets towards Apple?
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to take that one?
I will do that. Okay. So first of all, my guess, and this is only a guess, that Apple will close probabilistic attribution, or will ban probabilistic attribution after they will open their own ad network. That will be like the final piece of death. But in a more realistic thing, I don't think so. I think that Facebook first, they have their user base on Android, which they can optimize and deliver a lot of value over there, and that's bigger audience than Apple. Secondly, I don't see Apple search ads becoming the big next thing. It's a very limited platform for discovery, because you're only entering your store, once every day, once every week, once every month, right? While you're playing with other application and you're interacting with a lot of your services on a daily basis, or maybe even on an hourly basis. So Apple should do much more in order to fight Facebook on their own game.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that although Apple search ads had increased and got stronger, it's still very limited. And I think it's going to stay like that at least for a while. So I don't think that Facebook has nothing to worry about from that.
Yeah, I also want to point out, I think it was there implicitly between your lines, and I want to say something more explicitly about the difference between the ad networks, and that is one is a search and the other is a discovery, right? So I think there's no chance in when thinking about it in this way, because with one, user comes with an intent, and then you show them the ad, with search, just like Google or Apple, whereas Facebook is in charge of getting you to expose to a brand, to a new product, etc. So that's something it's unless, I don't know, a new platform will come out of Apple, but I don't think Apple, the App Store can serve for that. Like Moshe was saying, how many times do you go on the App Store, to browse? You don't do that.
Like news.
Or at least I don't.
Okay, cool. So next question. what are the top challenges you've been facing, and what are some workarounds that you found?
I think that the biggest challenge is on the optimization level. We're getting less and less data, at least for the deeper funnel events. And we need to kind of rethink about more complex events, more complex funnels and more long funnels. One of the workarounds that we have found is that many app activities moved into a web to app kind of model in order to both gain more data back and also for making a more accurate optimization with the limitation that we have. So this is a very significant approach and help that we see that help us on our day-to-day job.
Yeah, Dia, just to add on that and maybe to elaborate for the audience, I think that what you referred as web to app campaigns are going to play a big part in the lives of many of us. It means that the campaign doesn't lead to the app, it leads to a web page in which the user identifies himself in this way or another. And then once he opens the app, he identifies himself again. And then we allow web tracking in the old-fashioned way, which is very accurate and enable us to have a user-level tracking. So just to add on that, there is no doubt that more and more advertisers are going to experiment with these kinds of funnels.
But when you say identify himself, do you mean like actively, or do you mean like passively?
Yeah.
With like
imagine, for example, a landing page, and then send me an SMS, and then I give you my phone number, and then when I registering on the app itself, I'm registering with the same phone number, so I know that you landed within the last hour on landing page with specific campaign attribution, and now you are registering, so I know exactly which campaign you came from. So it's not. I mean, I wouldn't use that as a login method because it's not bulletproof in terms of security, but in terms of campaign attribution, it's 95% bulletproof, and that's definitely much more than we can obtain in any other mean.
Yeah, well, in that case, I think that it's a solution that can work for part of the application, like utility, right, or an application that you have a lot of interest to kind of download and use. But if you're just on your discovery mode and you want to kind of download your next game that is going to kind of that you're going to play with, I don't think that people will kind of deliberately or will contribute their email or their phone number just to kind of be able to download the application. So that's like, maybe it's a solution, but it's not a full solution.
Yeah, there are many other problems with the solution I just mentioned, right? Because Facebook ads does not allow you to lead to a, if it's an app ad, then it needs to lead to an app, not to a web page. So there are many problems with what I just said, of course, but I do think that it's definitely something that advertisers are going to experiment with. Right. People are talking about it all over.
Additional challenge that we encountered is like, how do I manage to calculate the right or how do I manage to calculate the right lifetime value of the user or predictive lifetime value in a short term, right? Because theoretically speaking, you can use the SKAd network to kind of count 63 days, but like practically speaking, after 3 days, it's like more than enough. You probably won't going to kind of get the 5th day of tracking. And I think that's the finest hour of the predictive analytical companies, the one that are kind of giving you some machine learning AI solution that can help you to identify the factors that leads you into kind of that predicts your ROAS day 7 or your ROAS day 30. And using them, you can actually understanding the value of the user within like 2 to 3 days, and then transfer it back to for the conversion value to your partner.
I want to raise a challenge, which actually is, Aviva, sorry if I'm taking you
On
apart,
your
but
end.
I want to raise a challenge that I want to ask the panel on. We didn't discuss the ATT at all, and that's a super interesting thing that I think our audience can learn from. And I want to learn from you guys. What do you think is better, showing it right when the app opens, maybe wait a bit for a bit more intent and momentum from the user? What strategies have you seen? What plays out well or doesn't?
Clearly, there is a room to emphasize the value proposition into opt-in. So I think that priming within a context makes sense. So if, for example, it was a referral link or whatever, and you want to know to give the benefit to a specific user, and you ask for tracking in order to give him the benefit, then it makes a lot of sense, and then the opt-in rate would be significantly higher. I think that the default state of this ATT, which most of it cannot be changed at all, is very intimidating, and without it, we know that the opt-in rate are super low.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't concluded our test yet. We are experimenting with a lot of different proposals. However, I must say that definitely like waiting for a little bit till the users will be more familiar with the application is a better strategy. Even if you're missing on attribution, your percentages of getting like positive answer is much higher. And I think your data is also showing that, Roy, that if you're asking existing users and asking new users, then there is like I think it's like 10% difference. If people are familiar with your application, trust your application, trust your brand, then they're more likely to kind of bring you the giving you the consent. And I think like this is the way to go, right?
Yeah, and
Probably varies quite a bit also, like depending on the type of app we're talking about.
That's true. And in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, probably, but in my opinion, the ATT is most useful for ad monetization. So, like when we think about the consent, we want to see the consent on helping us to kind of get higher CPMs more than like giving us the correct attribution. And that's a key in our testing.
So I just had a look at the time, and we do need to wrap up. Sorry, guys, we could talk for hours about this, I'm sure. So I want to thank everybody for joining, our panelists, Adi, Moshi, Roy, and Elad. It was a pleasure, as always. And especially a thank you to all the attendees. If you guys have any more questions or want to reach out to us, find us on LinkedIn. I guess that's the best way to do this, and just connect with us there. Again, I hope you had a great session and learned some things, and thanks again for joining.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.